Angel's Egg is a masterpiece. Iconic and like nothing else, this trippy art house experience is bound to stick with you. Directed by Mamoru Oshii, this film captures the peaks of his unique trademarks, with its striking imagery and haunting atmosphere, all matched in turn by the composer Yoshihiro Kano. Interestingly, Kano is not a film or television composer, the vast majority of his catalog being experimental modern classical music that blends together Western orchestral, traditional Japanese, and computer music. Aside from Angel's Egg, his only other soundtrack credit is for a drama film titled The Life of Cusco Budori. While I'm immensely interested in just how he got brought onto the project, unfortunately that information doesn't seem to be available, at least in English. What is available, though, is the score he left behind, which speaks well enough unto itself that he was the perfect choice. Angel's Egg crafts this eerie atmosphere, but throughout it all, as fearful and somber and uncomfortable every second is, there's an inescapable beauty to it. The aesthetic quality to those fearful shadows, like the mystery, for better or worse, in a foggy day. The soundtrack impeccably captures this quality at every turn. Dissonance. Dissonance is the term we use to describe two notes which conflict, or clash against one another. There's stronger dissonances and weaker dissonances, but the core behind dissonance is a desire to resolve. The push and pull of dissonance leading to consonance is the foundation of all music, and without it, music would be pretty boring. What you see in some modern music is an even heavier push towards dissonance, experimenting with maintaining that tension, or even trying to contextualize something we perceive at first as dissonant as something consonant, rejecting the notion of standard tonality. Kano, for his part, utilizes the breadth of the span between the harshest dissonance and consonance in the score for Angel's Egg. His use of dissonance is gradually built up, adding voices and instruments one at a time to form a chord that gradually increases in tension, then using silence and counter themes for a brief change of pace. In most cases, his dissonance is not especially abrupt, with the main exception being the fisherman's chase, the most tense and warlike scene in the film, which maintains a sharp, loud, and dissonant character throughout. Outside of that, though, the dissonance is steadily added, bit by bit, a growing tension begging for a release that silence will never satisfy. And he grants that release, but never fully. There's always some conflict in the notes, always a sense of longing for resolution. Even when the darkest clouds part and we get a brief glimpse of the light, there's an inescapable melancholy to every moment. Building on this aspect of dissonance and consonance, the soundtrack takes it further to an even more basic degree, simply that of contrast, one idea pitted against another. Frequently throughout the soundtrack there is one theme and character established, which is met with a response from another theme and character, one that is often quite disconnected and different. The call and response is repeated and even sometimes interspersed as these seemingly contradictory ideas are layered atop one another. That endless duality, that there are two sides to the coin, and how they often seem so irreconcilable and yet utterly inseparable. Playing into Angel's Egg's themes of faith and clear Christian imagery, the choir is a mainstay of the soundtrack, perhaps the most reliable pervading aspect. It often, very clearly intentionally, evokes the sensation of choral church music, particularly that of the Renaissance and Baroque periods in its more tonal moments, with very clear contrapuntal movement in distinct voices. This connection is particularly evident in the main theme, which even has the harpsichord, a period instrument, and in the scene in which the girl enters an abandoned building with a stained glass ceiling that seems to be a church. Interestingly, the soundtrack will establish this style, but follows it up by developing it into a richer texture that is much more romantic by adding a heavy chromatic line after establishing the initial character. It wants to borrow from our knowledge to create this sensation of religiosity, but Kano takes it a step further, going beyond to create a rich and moving expression that seems to me to be filled with great sorrow, a mournful expression that requires more than mere convention would allow for. An interesting musical statement worth consideration interpretively is when the boy destroys the egg. The piece that plays during and in the sequence following before the girl awakens is the central theme of the film, a choral melody. However, while the chorus continues to sing, gradually increasing dissonance is added beneath alongside a repeated note in the chimes that is like the ringing of a church bell. Finally, when the dissonance is at its peak, it fades away and we are left with the theme again as it resolves. But this time it ends on a Picardy third. A Picardy third is a musical technique dating back to the 15th century, wherein a piece in minor cadences in the relative major, a sad piece with a happy ending, as it were. I find the fact that the piece plays at this specific moment in the film fascinating, and I can't say I have a concrete answer as to its meaning, but I think it's something worth a bit of thought. Could it imply that destroying this egg, despite the conflict it causes, is ultimately for the better? A sense of final satisfaction or acceptance towards the world as it is? Who knows? But it's interesting nonetheless. That endless unease, within it an unspeakable beauty, that which Angel's Egg reflects on both a visual and auditory level. The 12-tone melodies, which give emphasis to all 12 notes of the chromatic scale, and the shifting irregular meters both create that sense of tension, unease, and add an almost alien quality to it. Yet, as we acclimate, the beauty makes itself known. Even in its most grotesque, it is strangely enchanting. The uncomfortable 5/8 morphs into an alluring waltz. So next time you remember Angel's Egg and its aesthetic, don't forget this part too. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, be sure to like and subscribe, and maybe even share the video around. Special thank you to my patron Talon, and if you'd like to support me, you can do so at my Patreon at patreon.com/KOMOVIJ. I hope you're enjoying this month of videos so far. I hope I don't die by the end of it, but thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.